As the movie begins, Teddy Jackson is attempting to create a video to advertise his fitness activities. He performs non-contact boxing, wears a sweatsuit, and has elastic bands, but none of them work. Mysterious assassin the Man from Toronto shows up at a cabin to question a suspect somewhere in the desert. Toronto prepares to slit open the suspect with a hot knife, but the man becomes frightened and immediately provides the information he needs. The man who contacted Toronto shoots and kills the suspect after Toronto has left. Teddy and his wife Lori are getting set to celebrate their anniversary. Teddy has a reputation for making mistakes, and even though Lori loves him, she is aware of it, to the point where her co-workers refer to mistakes as teddying things up. Teddy struggles to make out the given address due to a low-toner situation when he makes a romantic getaway at an Airbnb. Teddy arrives at work and has a meeting with his boss Marty. Marty is upset with Teddy due to he printed posters for their gym without include contact information for the business. Despite the fact that Marty likes Teddy, he is forced to fire him. Toronto is contacted by his handler after arriving home and starting to make breakfast. The handler informs him that the next deal he has lined up is for $2 million, despite the fact that Toronto only wants to relax. In an attempt to celebrate their anniversary, Teddy is treating Lori to a day at the spa. After leaving her, he goes to the Airbnb, according to the reservation he printed out. Teddy reads it incorrectly and winds up in the cabin where Toronto is supposed to meet his target. Teddy is taken to the basement by the household thugs, who mistakenly believe him to be the Man from Toronto. Teddy tries to comfort the target as soon as he realizes that he is in trouble, but the man is afraid and ultimately provides the thugs with the information they need because of his fear. The FBI raids the home shortly after a flash grenade is thrown into the basement, apprehending Teddy and all the other guys inside. Two agents question Teddy, who they are confident is not the Man from Toronto, but they need the Man from Toronto to assist them in capturing former Venezuelan Colonel Sebastian Marin. Teddy admits that he is not the Man from Toronto during their interrogation. He attempted to orchestrate a coup the year before in order to overthrow the government, but U.S. intelligence prevented him. Before they could be detained, Marin and his wife Daniela were able to flee. To get close to Marin and take him out, they want Teddy to keep acting as the Man from Toronto. Agent Santoro is given the responsibility of caring for Lori while Teddy is at work, but Teddy feels threatened by Santoro due to his charm and good looks. Teddy must explain to Lori that he was called to a work session because he did not to inform her of his firing. She spends time with her friend Annie while being guided by Santoro. The handler tells Toronto about the miscommunication and provides him with Teddy's details. When he comes across Teddy's fitness advertisements, he finds it hard to accept that the man being mistaken for him is indeed Teddy. Teddy is brought to meet Daniela by the agents, and he follows them. Daniela orders her men to accompany Teddy to a hangar rather than meeting Marin. Toronto holds one of the agents at gunpoint and commands them to follow. Teddy eventually boards a flight for Puerto Rico. They still assume Teddy is the true assassin when Toronto sneaks aboard the aircraft in mid-flight and shows himself to be the man they were hunting for. When killing Marin's soldiers, Toronto shows his strength by saving Teddy when the two almost fell out of the plane. Following the plane's explosion, they touch down in a field and begin moving away on foot. Since they don't leave witnesses alive, the handler contacts Toronto and reprimands him for not killing Teddy. Toronto advises Teddy to track down Mr. Green and bring him to Marin because Marin has already seen Teddy's photo and thinks he is Toronto. Another assassin, the Man from Miami, shows up on a golf course to strike his target with a golf club. He receives a call from the handler, who extends an offer of employment to handle the Toronto situation. Miami nods in agreement before shooting the other golfer who saw the incident using his golf club as a weapon. To discover Mr. Green, Toronto brings Teddy to a tech conference. In order for them to discover Green, he teaches Teddy how to pose as in persuasion. Toronto uses an earphone to communicate with Teddy as he is carried into a room with one of Marin's men. When Teddy is presented with 4 kidnapped men, he must question each of them to determine which is Mr. Green. When he accidentally slices one of the men's knives under his eye, it starts to bleed. He is given blades as a kind of torture to force them to speak. Teddy pukes on 2 of the men despite his best efforts to contain himself, and one of them confesses to being Green. Toronto is forced to intervene and take out the thugs once the chief thug realizes Teddy's earpiece and starts to kill him. He discards Mr. Green's thumb after having it cut off and bagged. Miami spots the two as they attempt to leave the building and begins to pursue them. Teddy is knocked off the cliff by him, but he grabs onto a piece of decor. Teddy tries to bring himself down as Toronto and Miami clash. Teddy tumbling over Miami as Toronto knocks him out prevents Miami from getting the thumb. The handler is then contacted by Toronto to request an update on the situation. Teddy is convinced that the handler lies to Toronto after hearing the exchange. Toronto informs Teddy that he is a failure based solely on what he has learned about him in person and from seeing his video history of creating his unsuccessful gym advertisements as they take off for Washington, D.C. When they get there, Teddy calls Lori, and they arrange to meet in a posh restaurant, which the FBI is informed. Toronto is coached on social skills by Teddy, who invites him along. They meet Lori, who brought Annie along as well. Toronto and Annie had a good time, but their relationship must end when Teddy notices Miami entering the cafe. Miami follows them and confronts them in a closet. Toronto battles him once more, taking a bullet to the leg, while Miami receives the thumb. Since Miami and the handler are on their way to see Marin, Teddy and Toronto keep moving and steal a police vehicle to catch up to them. Teddy inquires about a job in Minnesota that keeps coming up as they travel to Marin's hotel room in Toronto. According to Toronto, he planned to kill a man who owed money for gambling to the wrong people, but he was deterred when he noticed the man's child. The individual went on to perpetrate a rampage, which Toronto afterwards regretted. When this work is over, he claims he wants to start his own restaurant and stop killing. Miami and the handler greet Marin and Daniela at the hotel. As Mr. Green was actually the primary thug who conducted the interrogation, they discover that the thumb Miami seized to detonate a device that will kill the president of Venezuela is ineffective. Even though the handler tries to persuade Marin that it's not him, Teddy turns up and poses as Toronto. Marin and Daniela are detained by the FBI when they arrive, but the handler and Miami get away. The amount that the handler would have received is ultimately accepted by Toronto. Teddy runs back home to look for Lori, but he instead discovers an empty house. As she didn't know what was happening with Teddy, she left him a message stating that she was heading to her mother's place. In the meantime, the handler starts reaching out to other assassins to hunt down Teddy and Toronto. Teddy runs to the train station the following day to try and reach Lori before she leaves after realizing that she will be there. Miami locates Teddy and attempts to kill him, but Toronto follows and saves Teddy, claiming he didn't enjoy the thought of Teddy perishing. Then they are faced by the man from Moscow, the man from Tokyo, and the men from Tacoma. Toronto eliminates all the assassins when the guys stumble onto Teddy's former gym. Miami surrounds them outside, but Teddy summons the resolve to punch Miami out, despite breaking his hand in the process. The beloved vehicle of Toronto is in the trunk when the handler arrives and wants the money. They arrive to a factory during a chase in which the handler throws grenades at Teddy and Toronto. The handler holds the two at gunpoint, but Teddy uses a lever to lower the handler into a scalding hot vat, where she perishes from her burn injuries. Teddy has permission to use his automobile in Toronto to catch up with Lori. Teddy arrives, apologizes to Lori for hiding information from her, and the two of them make up. Then, as a result of Teddy leaving Toronto's car on the tracks, it gets crushed by a train, sending all the money flying. Teddy then gets assaulted by the police. Teddy and Lori are having a baby 1 year later. While dating Annie, Toronto recently built his restaurant. Even though Toronto still wants to murder Teddy for damaging his car, Teddy's no-contact boxing gym has flourished. Well, that's all for today's video. We hope you enjoyed it, and please support us by subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to get notification for new videos every we post.